Red Bull has made a gamble so risky, it could decide whether Max Verstappen fights at the front or spends a season wrestling with a car he no longer trusts. The so-called Macarena wing is gone, and suddenly the balance that once made Verstappen look untouchable appears dangerously fragile. In Formula One, a single tenth of a second can separate control from crisis. But this is not only about lap time. It is about confidence, tire grip, corner balance, and a desperate Red Bull decision that may have removed the one thing holding the entire car together. And the most worrying part is not what Verstappen is losing on the straights. It is what the car may now be taking away from him in the corners. Because once we connect the wing, the unstable rear end, and Red Bull's growing pressure, their gamble starts to look far more serious than anyone expected. Subscribe to the channel. To understand why this matters, forget the name of the wing for a moment. Forget the jokes, the nickname, and the attention surrounding it. What matters is what that part may have been doing for the car. A Formula One wing is not simply there to make the car look aggressive. It controls the air. It decides where that air moves, how strongly the tires are pushed into the track, and whether the driver feels confident enough to attack a corner without hesitation. Think of it like running down a steep hill in shoes that fit perfectly. Every step feels planted. Your body trusts the ground. You do not need to think about balance, because the balance is already there. Now imagine changing those shoes halfway down. They may look faster. They may even feel lighter. But if your feet begin to slide, every step becomes a calculation. That is a problem Red Bull may now be facing. Max Verstappen is at his most dangerous when the car reacts immediately. He turns in, the front responds, and the rear follows without creating doubt. That connection allows him to brake late, carry speed, and place the car exactly where he wants it. But when the airflow changes, even slightly, that trust can disappear. And once a driver begins waiting for the rear of the car to move, the damage spreads far beyond one corner. He may brake earlier. He may hesitate before applying full power. He may avoid the aggressive steering inputs that usually separate him from the rest of the field. Each compromise looks tiny on its own. Together, they can destroy a lap. This is why Red Bull's gamble feels so dangerous. The team may not simply be chasing more speed. It may be trying to fix one weakness without creating another. That sounds like normal development. Every Formula One team changes parts throughout a season. But there's a difference between upgrading a car and disturbing the quality that made it work. Imagine removing one card from the middle of a carefully balanced tower. The card itself looks small. The tower may even remain standing for a moment, then the movement begins somewhere else. The front loses confidence. The rear becomes nervous. The tires begin working differently. The driver starts adjusting his style. Engineers make more setup changes to compensate, and suddenly one new part has created 5 new questions. This is where the Macarena wing becomes more than a funny name. It becomes a symbol of something Red Bull cannot afford to lose: predictability. A fast car is important. A predictable car is essential because a driver can work around a car that is slightly slow. He can change his braking points, protect the tires, and search for time in different places. But a car that behaves differently from one corner to the next is much harder to fight. It forces a driver to react instead of attack. And for Verstappen, that difference is enormous. His greatest strength has never been raw aggression alone. It is the control behind that aggression. He understands where the limit is, reaches it quickly, and stays close to it without wasting movement. But that only works when the car gives him clear information. When the steering feels one way on entry, another way in the middle, and something completely different on exit. The driver no longer has one problem. He has 3. And the tires make everything even more complicated. A nervous car can cause sliding. Sliding creates heat. Too much heat reduces grip. Less grip creates more sliding. It becomes a trap. The driver slows down to protect the tires. But slowing down can make it harder to generate the right temperature. He pushes harder to recover the time, but that extra push may overheat them again. Suddenly, the car is not simply difficult. It is forcing the driver to choose which kind of difficulty he wants. And that is where Red Bull's decision begins to look desperate, because removing or changing a part is rarely about that part alone. It can reveal what the team fears most: Perhaps the old solution created too much drag. Perhaps it limited performance in another area. Perhaps the team believed the new direction offered a higher ceiling. But a higher ceiling means nothing if the driver cannot reach it consistently. And this is the tension at the heart of the gamble. Red Bull may be searching for a faster car on paper, while Verstappen is fighting for a car that feels faster from inside the cockpit. Those are not always the same thing. A simulation can suggest an improvement. A wind tunnel can show cleaner airflow. The data can point toward a theoretical gain. Then the car reaches a track. The wind changes. The surface becomes uneven. The tires begin to move. And the driver discovers something the numbers did not fully capture. Confidence cannot be measured as easily as downforce. But confidence changes everything. It changes when the driver brakes. It changes how early he turns. It changes how quickly he returns to the throttle. Most importantly, it changes whether he believes the car will obey him when the pressure is highest. And the deeper problem is still ahead. Because if the missing wing has disrupted the balance, Red Bull cannot solve it by simply asking Verstappen to drive around the issue. They must decide whether to reverse course, redesign the concept, or continue pushing deeper into a direction that may already be costing them. That decision could shape far more than one difficult weekend. It could decide whether the struggle is temporary, or whether Red Bull has removed a small piece that was secretly protecting the entire car. But the wing itself may not be the real story. The real story is what Red Bull's decision reveals about the car underneath it. Because teams do not abandon a visible solution without a reason. They do it when the compromise becomes too expensive, when one game begins creating losses somewhere else, or when the data suggests that the entire concept has reached a limit. And that possibility changes the meaning of Verstappen's struggle. At first, the problem can look simple. Remove one wing configuration, lose some stability, and bring back a revised version later. But Formula One cars are not built from isolated pieces. Every surface affects another surface. Air leaving the front wing changes what reaches the floor. The floor changes how the rear behaves. The rear wing changes how much resistance the car creates on the straights. It is like squeezing one side of a balloon. The pressure does not disappear. It moves. Red Bull may have tried to release pressure in one area, only to create a larger problem somewhere else. And this is where the conflict becomes more serious. A team can design a car that produces strong numbers in perfect conditions, smooth airflow, stable temperatures, clean laps, no traffic, but races are not perfect. The car follows another driver. The wind changes direction. The tires age. The fuel load becomes lighter. The track's surface changes from one corner to the next. A solution that works in a controlled environment can become unpredictable when all those variables arrive at once. For Verstappen, that unpredictability may be the real enemy, not a complete lack of speed, not one dramatic failure. Something more frustrating. A car that offers grip, then takes it away. A car that feels sharp in one phase of the corner, then suddenly becomes reluctant in the next. Imagine pushing a shopping cart with one wheel that occasionally locks. Most of the time, it moves normally. Then, without warning, it pulls to one side. You can still control it, but you cannot relax. Now imagine doing that while traveling at racing speed, with barriers close by, tires losing performance, and rivals waiting for the smallest mistake. That is why a driver can appear to be fighting the car even when the lap time does not look disastrous. The struggle happens before the mistake. It happens in the hesitation. It happens when the driver leaves a little more space at corner entry. It happens when he delays the throttle by a fraction. It happens when he chooses survival over maximum attack. And those fractions begin to accumulate. One corner costs almost nothing. The next costs a little more. By the end of the lap, the gap has become visible. By the end of a race stint, the tires may have paid the price. But there's another layer. Verstappen's driving style may expose a weakness more clearly than another driver's style would. That does not mean he causes the problem. It means he reaches the problem faster. A driver who stays farther from the limit may feel less instability, because the car is never being asked the hardest question. Verstappen asks that question almost immediately. How late can I brake? How quickly can I turn? How much speed can I carry? How early can I use the power? When the car is a clear answer, he can make it look dominant. When the answer changes without warning, he can make the weakness impossible to hide, and that creates a difficult situation inside the team. Engineers need clean information. They need to understand whether the problem comes from the wing, the floor, the suspension, the tires, the setup, or the way those elements interact. But when several parts influence the same symptom, finding the cause becomes incredibly difficult. A nervous rear end can come from more than one place. A weak corner entry can force a setup change that harms the exit. More front grip can make the rear feel less secure. More rear stability can make the front feel slow. Every solution has a cost. And Red Bull may now be trapped between two versions of the car. One version could be stable, but too slow in a straight line. The other could be efficient, but too difficult through the corners. One gives the driver trust. The other gives the stopwatch potential. The perfect answer would give both. But Formula One rarely offers perfect answers. That is why the word desperate matters. Desperation does not always look like panic. Sometimes it looks calm. A new part arrives. The setup changes. The team speaks carefully. The driver searches for balance. From the outside, it appears controlled. Inside the problem, however, every decision becomes heavier because the team is not only trying to improve performance, it is trying to identify which weakness is safe to keep. That is a brutal choice. Accept too much drag, and the car becomes vulnerable on the straights. Remove too much downforce, and the driver loses confidence in the corners. Protect the front tires, and the rear tires may suffer. Protect the rear, and the car may refuse to rotate. The team is not choosing between good and bad. It may be choosing between different kinds of damage, and the pressure becomes greater when the driver is Verstappen. He has built his reputation on extracting performance from difficult situations. When even he begins to look uncomfortable, the natural reaction is to assume the problem must be severe. But that assumption can also be misleading. The car may still be fast in certain conditions. It may still produce competitive sectors. It may still look strong when the tires are fresh. The danger appears when performance window becomes too narrow. A narrow window means everything must be almost perfect. The temperature, the ride height, the balance, the tire preparation, the wind, the traffic. Miss one of those conditions, and the car changes personality. Think of a door that only opens when you lift it at exactly the right angle. Technically, the door works, but nobody would call it reliable.